I think it has definitely helped to be busy. It does hit you, well, for me at least it did, the first few times after a busy day, and then you come home and the house is so quiet. Like, that's when the little, like the throat starts closing up and the eyes start prickling a little bit, getting a little teary.
We are looking forward our way, taping today in Hilliard, Ohio, and Delaware County, Ohio. Hi, this is Carol. I know you expected to hear Brett's voice, and I promise that you will, but I have a treat for our listeners today. A few weeks ago, I asked Brett how he was doing, knowing that his youngest child, Hayden, had gone off to college. The Johnson household would be empty of kids very soon. As we discussed changes at his home, I suggested that we focus on this topic for a podcast. After all, there aren't too many of us who have not experienced the transitions of kids moving in and out. So let me introduce my guest today, Brett Johnson, CEO and owner of Circle 270 Media, and my co-host for this podcast program, and Brett's wife, Dr. Angie Beumer Johnson, professor of English and teacher education at Wright State University, and the founder of WordBridge Now, LLC. Brett and Angie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Kind of weird the table's been turned. A little.
Just a little. And listeners, I've got the questions.
Oh, yeah.
So we're gonna have fun. So first, congratulations. You both have two of the greatest kids, and they're pursuing their dreams. Your oldest, Madeline, graduated from Kent State University and is pursuing her dreams in social media marketing. Hayden just left for the University of Cincinnati with a direct enrollment into the College of Nursing. I remember when Hayden didn't meet my shoulder, and now I don't meet his shoulder.
That's very true.
Each of them it just seemed like yesterday too, didn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Each are pursuing their dreams, but the term empty nesting it seems like it's synonymous with grief, loneliness, and letdown. And according to Webster and Wikipedia. But you both knew that Hayden was going to go out of town for school. So was it grief or joy that hit you first, or was it both?
I don't know about joy.
No.
Though we may have been lucky in some sense that we got to spend a good handful of years with him without Madeline, because they're 3 to 4 years apart. So we got a lot of time with him solo while she was at school, and also after she graduated and moved out on her own. So that may have been a blessing or a curse, because we got to be closer to him over the last 3 or 4 years than it would have been real quick, just 1 year. But we did take advantage of that time, though. We get to spend a lot of time with him, and a lot of memories that were just between the three of us, as we did and do with our daughter, too. So I think we did it right. It was still hard, of course. I don't know if it was joyful necessarily, other than, for me, joyful seeing him take his next step. That is big. That was big for me. But, for me, it was sorrowful, too. Not sorrowful necessarily, but sad. Because it's a new stage for him, exciting for him, but at the same time, it changes things for us too.
I feel like for years I had been saying, when I'm an empty nester, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. And it kind of hit me like a brick wall that, I didn't expect to be sad. And I was, but I kept trying to remind myself that there are good things about every age. There are good things about every age.
All right.
It is.
Go ahead.
It really is a time when they're excited and you want to be excited with them, but it also is fearful.
Right. Mm-hmm. Somebody mentioned to me a couple of weeks before her son was leaving, she had a friend that told her that you're crying for the right reasons. You're not crying because you're fearful. You're crying because you experienced greatness. You had a great time with him. You're going to miss him for all the right reasons versus, oh man, he's going to be homesick. Oh man, that school's not going to work for him. Oh, all those fears. It's really more of, it's joy, really, but missing him with the everyday things that we used to do, but we know he's in a good place. We know that he's going to do well. It just comes down to it's done. One day he's here, the next he's not. Same with Madeline when she left. One day she's here, the next oh, wow, we're just texting with her now. That's it. For a long time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So were there family traditions that you focused on or specific activities that you tried to replicate before taking him to college? Was there a favorite restaurant or a favorite meal at home? And, how did he react to being the focus of those activities?
I think we were a little more attentive about trying to say, hey, let's get some takeout and watch a movie together, or trying to do things that we just normally would do. And he was about his life being a busy senior, and okay, we need to just get some things on the calendar and say, hey, how about let's do this on Saturday night. So one of the things that was kind of an impromptu, Madeline and Hayden both like the animated show Bob's Burgers, and there was a Bob's Burgers feature film that had come out. And so one night I said, hey, let's get Five Guys Burgers and watch Bob's Burgers. And he thought that was just the best. And then we did it again with Madeline. Yes.
I mean, Hayden had a pretty busy schedule. He was involved in a lot of things at school.
Right.
And that time was precious to him for being with his friends before they all went off on their own way. So you really did kind of have to shoehorn yourself right into his schedule, didn't you?
For sure. We did that with Madeline as well, too, with all her busyness as well, too, thinking back at that time and taking advantage of her sharing her friends' time with us. And, it was different with him, but to at least, like you said, shoehorn yourself in with activities, with sports that he had, that we got to share those memories and still talk about them.
Right.
I do remember.
And Brett, you were able to, I'm sorry, you were able to help on the volleyball team.
Exactly. Yeah. Which was our bonding moments together in regards to going to practices and such. And then Angie had her bonding moments and still does these, the Wordle game, the app, both of them do it daily. So it's one of those little contact, the kind of that, how fast did you get it done? That sort of thing. So, so we all have our little things together, which is great.
Nice.
Yes.
Angie, we'll have to talk about Wordle. I have to talk to you about my percentage.
Oh, wow.
She's rocking it, apparently, yeah.
I think I am. I don't know if anybody, how it goes with anybody else. Anyway, okay, so technology has certainly changed the dynamics between parents and kids over the years. I can remember going to school and we didn't have a telephone in the bedroom in my dorm the first year, so things have really changed. There's literally a 24/7 connection to your kids. What are the pros and cons of being an easy phone call when a child needs to connect to you? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Okay, so who's got the award for the most phone calls? Which one of you, or is it Hayden calling you?
Oh, boy.
He has not called much.
No.
At all. We've mostly texted, or
I've talked you guys off.
Or I will say, like last Sunday, I said, "Hey, how about a chat today?" And so we put him on speakerphone, and usually we're doing it that way, that he's on speaker while we're eating dinner, or last Sunday when we were just hanging out, and I made sure to put my phone on vibrate, and I let him know, hey, don't call us when we're talking to Carol. But
give him a shout out from me.
Yeah,
too.
Exactly.
I guess, like your comment about not having a phone in the dorm. I remember going to school and set certain days to call mom and dad up for the phone that was in the dorm at that point in time. I guess it's one of those, we know that he's pretty much a text away. Madeline was always a text away, that when we texted, there was a comment back. So that was enough, and is enough unless there's needs to be more, and he'll call. I mean, that first week though, he called about some minor things just to check home and things we had talked about. He forgot some city he was thinking about, and when we dropped him off, and And I said, oh, you'll remember in the middle of the night. And, and 2 days later he says, oh, that town was, just texted back. So that was good that he, wanted to finish that conversation with us. And I've texted him a couple of times, just watched a movie, said, hey, that movie, you should watch that. And he says, oh thanks, Dad, I will, so that's fine. He was both kids are, I think, fairly independent. And so we're kind of used to that. But we also know that he and she, they have to have their own life. They have to have their own life. And they know we're here. If they ever need to call or text, we'll, whether we answer immediately, we'll get back with them. So I think that may help with the technology piece of not having that 24/7. Okay, call us on Sunday evening, 7:00. Every week because we got to hear from you.
Right.
We know his schedule's busy. We know Madeline's schedule is busy. But when they talk, we have their attention.
Yeah.
Right.
We still have, I'm glad they haven't cut us off. We have them on Life 360 and they have us on Life 360, which is, kind of the locator app. And, initially we're like, oh, look, he's here on campus, but we really don't look anymore. And it's good for them to see for us as well. So it's trying to just letting it go.
Right. I mean, the technology is there to use if they need it, but
right.
as opposed to it stopping them from living their life on their campus.
Exactly.
Correct.
So,
Right.
Yeah.
It's, we see that as a safety net. Like if there is ever something that feels wrong or dangerous or
Yeah, the same rules apply that we had for both of them for high school. And not really rules, but suggestions. And that if you're in a bad situation, call us. If you need to, walk out, throw us under the bus, whatever the case might be. But make sure you utilize the tools that you have. And that if that needs to be, call us, even though we're 2 hours away or 3 hours away or 15 minutes away. Call us. Let us know what's going on.
I remember for both of the kids at their graduation parties, me telling them, put my phone number in your phone in case you can't get mom and dad to call me. Just so they know they've got other people that they can talk to. I think too, I even connected Madeline with a friend of mine who lived at Kent when she was up there.
Yes.
So who was used to work at Kent. So so it's always good to know that they've got backup and if they need it.
Right.
For sure.
Oh yeah.
Wonderful.
Exactly.
We appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, you're both real busy folks. You've got not only your positions, but community activities, professional networking. Has that sustained you through this transition? What would you suggest other parents do to make it through such times when their family change and their stages change?
I think it has definitely helped to be busy. It does hit you, well, for me at least it did, the first few times after a busy day, and then you come home and the house is so quiet. Like, that's when the little, the throat starts closing up and the eyes start prickling a little bit, getting a little teary. But, we told him he would settle in really quickly at the university, and he did. And I'm surprised that I feel like we settled in pretty quickly too. That it was really hard for a couple weeks, but
is it easier for the second one? You sort of know what to expect after having had Madeline off to school.
I don't know. It's a different situation, so it's kind of hard to compare because we knew we had him still around, but she was gone. So. Yeah, it's difficult to answer. I know being busy is going to be the savior of this for sure. Lots of different things, and it's not busy work. It is like, okay, we get to dive right back into doing what we need to do for our own jobs and such. It certainly is a good precursor to retirement. That when one thing stops, you need to have something else going on. It's kind of
I can attest to that.
I've been doing a lot of compare and contrast to that. It's like, and you hear a lot of people, oh yeah, I retire next year. What are you going to do? It's like, I don't know. It's like, oh boy, you need to figure something out. So I think a lot of that I think we thought about this too, is, okay, when he's gone, what can we do now that we don't have to keep watching the clock and get back for him, or he's got practice, we got to be, for that. So it actually has given us the luxury of time to give a little bit more here and do a little bit more there and just go walk the dog and take him to a park rather than around the neighborhood. Yeah, those sorts of things that would take extra time that we knew we didn't really have. So I think it's a readjustment of time, understanding each other's, what we each other have to do. But yeah, I think it's not been that difficult to at least for us, not that difficult to transition. Luckily, for staying busy and helping that fill the void.
One of the things for me was it felt like it was less about the physical house being emptier, but I felt like I was suddenly catapulted into a whole next phase of life that I wasn't really thinking about. I remember I had to go to some other town for an errand, and I drove by one of the schools where Hayden had played a game, and I just thought, it just hit me like a brick wall. I think I've said that more than once here today, but I am not a parent of a school-aged kid anymore. Wow, okay. That, of course, you know that, but it just kind of felt like, wow, the next time I'm cheering for somebody may be a grandkid or something. I just feel like I just like, boom, like really catapulted into this next phase of life. And wow. So it's been making me think of things in terms of what's my real purpose? What do I really want to do with my life? And in education, we talk about backwards planning, that if you're doing a big project, you need to know where do you want them to be at the end, and then what do you need to teach them to be able to do that well, and plan backwards. And I kind of feel like, all right, I need to do that for myself, look at the end of my life and then go back and think. So there's been a lot of introspection, which has kind of come with some anxiety, I think, because I was so busy before with work and kids, and your brain just doesn't have time to do a lot of thinking about that. So not in a terribly bad way, but it's been opening my eyes to some different things that I want to think about now.
I think that's a really good lesson, that even if you think you've prepared for a life change, it's not going to be exactly what you had assumed it was going to be.
That's
great point. My story is I hadn't planned to retire, but I left a position and then COVID hit, so I guess I've retired. So
Right.
you just don't know. But Angie, too, I think that things are a little different for moms today than they were 40 years ago because moms are working.
Sure.
And so when a mom who hadn't been working, her job was full-time mom at home, and suddenly there was nobody at home, that's a huge change.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
having something on your schedule is better than nothing on your schedule.
Right.
For sure. Yeah,
Yep.
for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. Okay. Well, as I mentioned early on, I had was talking to Brett about this empty nesting issue, and I had read a column by Connie Schultz, who is a retired editor and writer for the Cleveland Plain Dealer, and she's currently a columnist for USA Today. She wrote a column on the changes that she went through when her children went off to college. A comment that she made really struck me, and let me quote her. "Not to make it all about us, parents, meaning parents, but what about us? Once they're gone, then what?" And that quote really hit me. So my questions to you, first, maybe parents do need to make this about them. After all, the kids have been the focus for years. And second, so what now? How do you fill that void?
It's a good question and a good thought. We tend to, it's for years, focusing on the kids. It's not to the lack of self-care, but it almost becomes a habit forming that that certain days of the week are going to be this, and get used to that. So I think there's something to that what about us? Why not make it focus on us? This transition. But Angie's been making a comment too, and I think it's a good way of looking at this. It's just a continual evolution. It's a continual change. So what is it this month? What is it this week? What do you want to do? You're allowed to do that. Don't feel that, don't play any guilt into this, that just because for, 16, 17, 18 years you've been focusing on, and maybe more because with 2 kids, all that time's been on them. Well, now it's time for you. I still go back to what I mentioned earlier. You probably need to be thinking about that day when you drop them off and you drive back. We, on purpose, I wanted all of us to be in the same car, going down, dropping him off, and for me to be with Angie on the drive back. I didn't want us taking 2 separate cars. And it wasn't difficult at all. Now, dropping off Madeline and coming back from Kent State was hard.
We did have to.
That was hard.
2 vehicles.
Yeah.
So that long drive back home by yourself.
Right. I just didn't want that to happen. So I think having us together was good then. But filling the void. I think it's I would suggest planning ahead, really thinking about, okay, when September rolls around, what is going to happen? What do you want to do? How, even if it's day by day, week by week, what do you want to do? And pursue it.
Well, and it's really not only for you individually, but for you as a couple too.
Right, for sure. Yeah.
I have been, of course, believing in the power of language. I was refusing to say empty nest. I was saying different. We are differently nesting. We are bringing in different people into our nest, and we will have to have you over, Carol. We just we have life for many years had pretty much just been our little nuclear family, and now, one of the first weeks after Hayden was back at school, we went to brunch for the first time in eons. We used to go to brunch with friends after church on Sunday mornings, and there for the first few weeks, like, oh my gosh, we're more social than we have been in the past decade. So, and last weekend for Labor Day, we invited Madeline to come over for dinner, and we said, hey, if your friend wants to come, invite her too. And then she said, oh, okay, hey, can her roommate come too? She's feeling homesick. I'm like, yeah, sure, come on over. And what about my other friend? I'm like, sure, she's welcome too. But so that's been fun. We just, again, I think Brett's hit the nail on the head, being intentional about it, putting stuff on the calendar and just saying, okay, we're going to do this. And
so it sounds like the message is to plan as opposed to be sad.
Amen.
Just plan, and
it will help you get through it. It will help you get through it for sure. Yeah, exactly. And Angie makes a good point too. And we may be an anomaly to this, but our social circle wasn't that large, so you do have to refocus on that. Okay, who do we go out to dinner with, or have them over for a cookout, or and we knew we'd have some volleyball families that we can go to commiserate with. They're missing their kids as well too, and we grew really tight with them over the last 2 or 3 years. So we know we're giving them a few weeks too to kind of settle down and feel their way. Since their kids have gone too, but to get with them. So, it's been a real luxury to be able to say, yes, let's go do this. But it is get it on the calendar though, to say, yeah, we're going to do this, this day. What evening do we have available to do that? And just no more work, no more other stuff. Carve it out, do it.
And that's it. I think that's one of the things that we noticed with COVID, that we both work home part-time-ish anyway, but when COVID hit, of course, we were here all the time, and it became really easy to just work nonstop. And we have too many days that it's work right up until it's time to go to bed. Like, okay, now again, we're having a potential about saying, all right, we're going to stop. We're going to relax and do something this evening.
Yeah, it's not an early bedtime anymore, right? The kids aren't there, so you can go and do something, go to a movie in the middle of the week and not think a thing of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Very good. So we've been talking about the kids leaving. So let's switch our focus here a little bit and talk about boomerang kids. It's been a hot topic for years, kids who just keep coming back home. However, even if they do come back home, it's really not the same. They've tasted their freedom. There's no putting that genie back into the bottle. How do you see your role as a parent changing once the kids are sort of quote unquote of age? And what do you think Hayden's perception is now of home since becoming an adult?
He has not been home yet, so
Yeah.
I guess we'll wait and see. I like to think Richard Rohr is a theologian and just philosopher that I really, really respect, and he has some audios that are called The Art of Letting Go. And I keep thinking about that in terms of Hayden and the kids. And I remember my mom saying this too, that my grandparents used to say this, like, well, even if it's not the choice I would have made, you have to let it go. And I'm like, okay, you really do. You have to let it go and keep it. It's in an odd way. Sometimes I feel guilty, like, shouldn't I still be doing more to help them? Shouldn't I? And then I think, no, this is it. This is them becoming an adult, and let it go.
Right. Yeah, I think that the coming home piece of it, I was thinking about this the other day about when I came home, and I remember, feeling great coming home. Yeah, fun. You get to see mom and dad again, and my sister at home and such. And then I remember that after a couple of days that I got to get out of here. I want to go back.
Really?
The independence kind of kicked in, going, yeah, my routine is now at school, and summer vacations were hard because I just felt that adultness coming on. So I'm going to be cognizant that he may be feeling the same way when he comes home. He may feel that anxiousness, I guess, that just he's fidgeting all over possibly, or just can't figure out what's going on. I'm at home. I should feel great. I should feel comfortable. I should be happy here. It's like, you're getting ready for that next stage. It's the natural thing to want to be independent, and you tasted independence for 4 months, and you did great with it. All of a sudden, we're asking you to live under our rules again. And so we're going to have to be cognizant of the rules per se.
Right.
We've never been that rule heavy, but it's still living under somebody else's roof where he was living independently that whole time. That he could go to bed when he wanted to. He could leave dishes out if he wanted to, that sort of thing. So there's probably going to be a little adjustment over the long break that we'll have with him. Coming home for a day or two, probably not much. He'll be way too busy doing things and such. But I think that first time home over the holidays will be an awakening for him and awakening for us. We'll see some differences in him, I'm sure. I hope we do. I hope we see some more independence from him and him growing up a little bit. That's going to be exciting to see that, even just that short amount of time. And he was already a mature kid, really, but just to see him continue to grow, that's going to be fun to see.
Hayden is such a quiet kid. It's going to be interesting to see after he's been out on his own how that will change.
Right.
That's so funny because I often had that perception of him too, like at school, like, oh, he's probably pretty quiet. And I remember one of his teachers looked at me like, no, he's always talking. He's always, and, seeing him on like the volleyball court, he's like the loudest one there. And, he was a co-captain, but he definitely was one of the loudest ones. He was one of the announcers for one of the homecoming activities for their high school of whatever it is, almost 2,000 or so. So it is funny, isn't it, that he kind of conveys this quiet self-assurance, I think, but like, no, he gets chatty, but
isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Angie, something that you just said too about fear, I don't want to call that fear, but your concern that you should be doing more. One of the ideas that I didn't really ask in a question to you formally, but hit me as we started talking, Is there a concern about a parent realizing that a kid's making a mistake, such as he decided to go to UC as opposed to the other schools that he had looked at, or he's doing great, he's real excited about nursing, but how about if it becomes really apparent that nursing's just not going to be what he's going to do? There are a lot of different things that kids get into at school that could be mistakes. How is that sitting in the back of your mind, and have you thought about, I guess it's an extension of what you went through when he was in high school with the notion of
Sure.
Getting a driver's license, having his car, that sort of thing. So,
Yeah. We talked a lot to him, and maybe to an extent that he was thinking we were questioning his decision to go to nursing school. But it was one of those, be honest with yourself. If this becomes too hard,
well, not even too hard,
but
it's
it's just that clicking, and it's not for you, especially with the university itself. You made the choice. It's okay. That's what you feel comfortable with. Go for it. But if there's just something that's not clicking, it's too big of a university, or you feel like you've getting lost in the numbers of it, or whatever the situation might be, keep it open. Keep talking about this, because it's never too late. You don't want to go 2 to 3 years into it and say, I probably should have gotten out of here a couple of years ago. Be honest about it. So we had those discussions. The degree itself, he did a lot of research about going into this. A lot of research, and it surprised both Angie and me about what he chose. Not that we had any preconceived notion of where he was going to go or what he was going to do, but the amount of time he took in watching videos and interviewed 1 or 2 nurses about this, I believe. He did his homework, so I think he's on the right path to understanding what this is going to mean.
Well, and shout out to the college planning experts with Juliana Smith. We had worked with friends of ours, Alex and Aaron Green. It's their business, and they really guided him to look into doing all of this research. And I remember asking him something about nursing, that he was thinking about being a certified nurse practitioner. And I said, how is that different from being a physician assistant? And I don't know if he has this accurate or not, but I thought it made some sense to me. He said, I think of a certified nurse practitioner as being more about treating the person and having that relationship, and a physician assistant as being more of treating the symptoms. So hopefully I'm not alienating some listeners, or you'll be getting some notes saying that's not it at all. But
that's okay.
The fact that he was looking at, I want to have connections with people. It was pretty impressive. One of the things that I was thinking about it's funny, now that some time has passed, we're on recording in September now, and initially there was a lot of, did I do this right? Should I have done more as a parent? And wow, that was heavy for a while, and kind of gotten away from that, fortunately. But man, and we know, we think a lot of our kids, and we think that not necessarily due to anything that we've done per se, but they are just wonderful people. And wow, it's easy to say, did I do enough? And
for not ever doing this before, we did pretty well. So
that was part of our conversation when I said to be an empty nester for the two of you is, those kids are phenomenal, and you're very lucky.
Yes, we are.
But they're very lucky too. But when you think about, kids are under a lot of pressure, not just to be successful in school, but I have to have a job when I graduate, and I can't, I don't want to have debt, and I don't want this, and I can't be a failure, and on and on and on. And a lot of that actually got started when they were in high school, with that progression of I have to. And what that does is keeps them from really making good decisions for themselves. I went, when I was working at Ohio State, I actually was taking a class, and I met a young woman who was taking this, and was an accounting class. Just a wonderful young person. And she was working full-time and going to school full-time because she had to pay her own tuition. And she was making a lot of mistakes. She could not handle that heavy of a schedule, and there was no help, no convincing her otherwise. So it to see a student fail because they're feeling boxed in is really, really difficult.
Yeah, I think we were lucky in that for both Hayden and Madeline, we did use college planners. It helped us get through this. I couldn't imagine going through, if nothing else, senior year for all the deadlines that come up every month. That there's the pressure to write. There's the pressure of you've got to have this in at this time. You got to have this in at this time. You got to follow up to make sure it's there. I can only imagine if you're doing it on your own and all of a sudden May come, or what is the official signing date, March or whatever it might be.
It's May 1st.
Or May 1st, yeah. Kind of May 1st, that all of a sudden it is done and you've done, parents and the kids have done all this work and there's nothing left. It's like preparing for a wedding. You get married, it's like, okay, done. So it was nice to have professional planners helping us with every stage of the game of research. And it goes to your question, Carol, about not to question, not to worry about what they've chosen and where they've gone. I think it helps a lot to vet everything out about the major, about the school, and what they plan on doing with their life. I think that helps with the pressures of got to get a job, got to pay for the debt that they'll get themselves under. I think some pre-planning helps a lot. I think some schools are doing better than others probably in helping them, and the parents too. I think a lot of focus is on the students to help them get through it, and it should be on their part because it is their choice ultimately when it comes down to it. But I think the parents' role in it is maybe needs to be lifted up a little bit so that it's kind of a joint effort to help everybody out.
When you think about it, coming up with a college planner is a huge thing to do. So it almost seems like it's one more task. But in actuality, if you could get through that and do that well, then it's going to make all the rest of it so much easier. Good point for our listeners. Great. So have you actually had an opportunity to talk about these transitions with other parents and learned any reactions from them? And is anybody having a difficult time, or is it? Are there some who are literally rejoicing that the kids are gone?
I think the grad parties, because Hayden was one of 13 seniors on his volleyball team, so we went to a lot of grad parties, and it was wonderful. Yes. But it was interesting that people who had not yet gotten to their last person, like, woohoo, like 1 down, 2 to go, or, only 8 more years until for some there's a big spread. So it feels like everybody is really looking forward to it, like I was. And then, I don't know, the people who it really is your last one, people were saying, hey, let's be sure to go to dinner. And yes, sure. Let's do.
Right.
Yes.
So I think there was a mix.
Yeah. And you really can't put your fingers on the emotions you're going to feel until you drop off your kid. Mm-hmm. You just don't. So at the graduation party, it's still, they're kind of in school. They're seeing people they're seeing all the time. And all of a sudden, September rolls around and it's not anymore.
Mid-August,
really.
August 15th was when we moved him in.
So I don't know whether, the parents that we saw and talked with, it'll be interesting when we get around back with them for dinners, lunches, whatever it might be, and how they're feeling now. Mm-hmm. So, and we will be cognizant of, making sure we ask the question, because obviously we're at a different stage than a lot of them are. I don't think we're necessarily older parents per se, but we were one of the few that that was it. A lot of them had other kids coming and a lot of them was their first going. So, you saw them talking and tearing up right then. That they were almost dreading that. Again, I think it was joyful tears, but it was going to be pull that Band-Aid off fast, So,
right.
So it'll be interesting when we get back with them to see how things are going. We haven't heard anything from them or hey, can we talk? Anything like that, which I think is good. So they, whether we're part of their support system or not, I think it will be interesting. Let's put it that way, to see how everybody's going through that transition.
Well, you brought up that Band-Aid, Brett, and it's, to me, like the week before moving was just the worst.
It was for some reason. Yeah.
It's rip the Band-Aid off and
it's getting all the stuff that's needed.
Okay, it's done.
Boxed
now
up, bagged up.
Now we're good. We're moving on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hayden is at a Hayden is at a school that is well known for co-op programs and internships, and so those kids are often not home for nearly the year. So that the empty nesting may be permanent if he doesn't get back.
Well, and for both Madeline and Hayden too, I just thought about this too. We were in driving distance for both of them, so we could eat, and we did. For Madeline, we'd go up to Kent and have an early lunch. Drive up, drive back. We can do the same for him. Now, if he were 2 or 3 or 5 states away, this might be a little different conversation. It could be on both sides.
Sure.
Because there is that safety in, okay, I'm only a couple hours away. And that's a nice, safe 2 hours. You're not going to go every weekend or come home every weekend.
Right.
But 5 states away, that you're there.
Yeah.
You're there, and mom and dad aren't coming, but maybe for the holiday or parents' weekend.
Right.
So
the
conversation could be a little different. So, I guess we have to wear those glasses and knowing that we're pretty close to him. And we would with Madeline too. Yeah.
So, Angie, you're working with college students every day. What advice did you give Hayden to ease his transition from living at home to being an independent college student? Were there some things that you've learned from your own students?
The piece about making sure to change your major if you're not happy. I've had, as an academic advisor as well as faculty members, we have a lot of students who transfer in from other colleges or from community college, but I also have a lot of people who change their majors pretty dramatically from exercise science to now I'm going to be a middle and high school English teacher, or from nursing to English. And so that was one of the big things to say, don't be concerned that you're going to be super far behind. You can catch up through the summers if you need to. I think he's going to be enjoying this major, and that was one of those pieces. He said, well, what, do you not think that this is a good choice for me? And I said, no, that's not it. Just, you don't know until you get into it. I didn't realize I was actually giving this as advice at the time, more of the poking and prodding when we were trying to order textbooks, and it's a system that I don't know, and I don't see things from the student view. And I told him, I said, okay, you have a separate academic advisor who's not faculty, and I said, you need to email her and ask this question. And he kind of eye rolled, and I'm not gonna. I said, come on, just email her. And thank goodness he did, because there were some things about clickers and subscriptions. And we were like, okay, you need one clicker and a subscription for each class, or do you need, what exactly do you need? So she gave us a ton of information, and that was just huge. So I definitely encouraged him, talk to your professors, go to their office hours, talk to your advisors. I just heard at a faculty meeting about inclusive language in your syllabus, and they used inclusive in a way that I hadn't really thought about before, and that is simply that as professors we often write our syllabi for other people like us to understand. That our dean talked about doing a syllabus swap, and they were each chopping up each other's syllabi and saying, well, I know what you mean by this, but is a student going to know what you mean by this?
Exactly.
And one of the biggest things that I'm like, oh gosh, I will do this differently. Actually, Brett and I were both first generation college students. And if you don't know what office hours are, that there were some students who thought office hours meant that's when you're not to bother me. That's when I'm in my office doing the stuff that I need to do to prepare for class. And so they said, well, maybe switch it to like student success hours or something. And I thought, well, maybe like open door hours or something like that. If you don't know, they always say you don't know what you don't know. So,
right.
And we don't know what they don't know.
That is so true. The other thing, I was an academic advisor and a career advisor at Ohio State, and I get so tired of parents telling me, well, my kid went to the advisor and they didn't help him at all, or, well, my kid got to career services and they didn't. And I'm like, they have to go a little prepared. They have to come up with their list of questions and their list of needs. But believe me, I've done those jobs, and there is a ton of stuff we could do to help students.
Yes.
And I really don't believe that career advisor or academic advisor completely did not help. And the student has to listen. Right. They may not like what they're hearing from their advisor, and they have to listen and figure it out.
Right.
But use those services. They're free on campus.
Yes.
Especially career services. This is my shout out to any parent who is listening. Get your kid to use career services. It's free. Because, boy, once they're looking at a professional career counselor after school, it is expensive. So use the services as you can.
Yep.
So,
shout out for writing centers, too.
Exactly.
Go to the writing center.
Yes. Right. Any tutoring help, any, math assistance, whatever.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. There are lots of services on those campuses. We're really lucky in Ohio. We have good, solid state universities with really good student services.
Yes.
You figure they want your kid to be successful. That is good for them, for the kids to be successful.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, so Angie just answered that question. So, Brett, how about if you start this next one? We always ask our guests if they have any last words of wisdom they would like to add to the show. I can't believe we're already almost finished here. Do you have any suggestions or advice for listeners today?
Probably reiterating a little bit of what I said earlier, but maybe adding as well, too, is really enjoy that last year. Make sure you're part of their lives as much as you can, because, again, they're going to start to become a little bit more independent. They're now seniors. They've got their car. They're borrowing the car. They're going to parties. They're doing all the sporting events and all the stuff that they can. So try to be a part of that. Know that there is an end to this, even if you have to mark it on the calendar or whatever. And speaking of the calendars, really track what is due so it doesn't catch you by surprise. Be a part, even though maybe your student wants to do it on their own, still help them, because it is overwhelming. It is overwhelming to get into a school. And I think also, as a parent, and there's lots of little pieces of advice, but become involved in how and what they're choosing to do in their career. Just listen to them. Let them talk it out. And maybe college is not for them, and maybe it's a tech
Very
school.
True.
But help them work it out. Let them talk it out without you dictating or slightly suggesting they go this direction or that direction. It's their life. You've given them the base of it. Let them go where they need to go and enjoy the ride, because it ends very quickly. It ends very quickly, and then it becomes another train that you ride with them from a distance, but you get to ride that one, though, too. But the more you're involved in that year or two before they leave, the more you're going to become involved when they're there at university.
Right. Angie, do you have some words of wisdom, too?
I think I said this earlier, too, but just reminding yourself that there are good things at every age. And I think that I started thinking about this when they were like babies into toddlers. Like, they were so sweet before they started.
Before they started to walk all over.
Right, exactly. But, really thinking about, so what is the gift of now? And, what is the gift of now that, okay, now I can give myself a reasonable amount of sleep each night, or, so I'm like, okay, I may be sad about this, but I can get better rest. So, all right, positives and negatives to everything.
Right. We have a neighbor down the street that was always walks his kids to school. The elementary school's right around the corner from us, and we were talking about us dropping Hayden off, and of course he was saying, "Oh yeah, that first day. I mean, all summer long, I love having the kids here, and then that first day of school, just nothing to do. I'm just sitting around it. I'm crying, So, but you know what? He's enjoying the now. He is. It will be very hard for him as it progresses, but I think he'll grasp it. But boy, he's enjoying the now. He truly is enjoying the now. So, which is something we get too busy sometimes to notice, to really do that. It goes way too fast, because it was so odd when he started school and Madeline started school that they start labeling them. Oh, they're the class of, and it seems so
2022.
2022. And like, oh my gosh, that's forever. Yeah. And then of course you start putting that date into how old you are at the time too. I'm going, oh my gosh, I'm going to be that old when he graduates. And of course it seems like you're going to be ancient, but then it comes like, well, I'm cool with that. I'm good. But you hear that graduation date, the class of, when they're kindergartners in first grade, and you go, wow, that's forever. And it's like, it's not. It goes pretty quickly. But that's okay. That's okay. Yeah.
And college is going to go quickly, and then there's another transition. And very good.
Yep.
Very good. Thank you so much for being willing to talk to me about this huge change in your lives.
Sure.
And it's I know that there are going to be some listeners out there who are going to in some ways dread hearing this, because their little ones are going to be growing up fast, but others who are going to appreciate knowing they're not the only ones having these feelings. So that's right. Phenomenal. So thank you again for your willingness to bear it all. And listeners, thank you for joining us. We are looking forward to hearing your feedback on this and any of our podcast episodes. Thank you again.